Hello, everyone. Every passenger has a story, Uber and Lyft. So, no matter what rideshare application you're doing, everyone has a story. And I know you all may think that that's not true, but it definitely is. I can sincerely say that all of the rides that I accumulated over the months turn into years, I've heard a lot of negative stories. I've heard some good, positive stories, but I want to focus on the positive stories that I've heard because every passenger has a story. I remember one time I picked up a client from a business and they got in the car. They were super happy. They were just getting off the phone with one of their loved ones. Now, I thought she was happy because it was a Friday, but Ashley said that she was happy because she just got the job. And, I was real happy for her. I was like, hey, congratulations. She was just so extremely satisfied with herself that as I continued to pull it off from where we were at, she expounded on that. She said that she didn't think she was going to get the job. She was telling me about all the time that she was preparing. It was for a sales job with the phone company. I'm not going to say the name of the phone company, but yeah, it was a sales job with the phone company. She was just telling me how appreciative that she was. And I didn't cut her off. You know, some people didn't know me say I have the propensity to cut people off and not let them finish. And that may happen sometimes. I'm not saying that that's an inaccurate statement, but on this day, I let her have her day. I believe that was a 25-minute drive to get her to where she needed to be. And she was telling me about the preparation that she had to do. She was telling me how her kids and her husband was helping her with with getting prepared and ready for the interview. And I thought to myself, like, hey, this is outstanding. This speaks on the beauty of marriage. It speaks on the beauty of, being determined and having the integrity to be in competition. It was great that her husband, helped her, and her kid helped her too. So that was good for her because, believe it or not, there's a lot of stories that take place like this on a daily basis, from individuals that do rideshare, do Uber, and any other gig apps. It don't have to necessarily be driving. It could be a food app. Though it's kind of hard to understand that because when you're doing food apps, you really don't have anyone in your car for the most part. But as it pertains to Uber and Lyft, every passenger has a story, and I was ecstatic for her. She was like, "Can you believe it?" And I told her, I was like, "Yes, I can believe it because what's for you is for you. And if you put in the work and keep pushing and put one foot in the other and believe in yourself, then it'll work out." And I insisted that she probably put in the hard work. She had a good mindset. She wasn't thinking bad things were going to happen, and therefore bad things did not happen. Even though life happens, when life happens, even for her, because she was explaining how she had been going on so many interviews, she had been applying for jobs, on many many websites, and she said that the money was around the ballpark that she normally make, and I was like, hey, that's excellent too, you know. And then she shared with me that she didn't really have to work, but she wanted to work. And I was like, that's great because two incomes are always better than one. And that illustrated that, she had some work ethic for her. She didn't want to put everything on her husband. And I know this could be a debatable topic with this next statement. You know, um, some saying the climate that we're in is a necessity for the man and the woman to both be working and contributing. It's not like how it was in yesteryears. But I think that depends from individual relationship to relationship. And I think if individuals have it, they'll do it. And then if they don't have it, they're unable to do it. It's really that basic. That's just what I believe. Uber and Lyft, every passenger has a story. This takes me back a few summers ago when I was doing rideshare, and I picked up a youngster. I picked him up from a debate, and believe it or not, I didn't even know it was a kid, a seventh grader, that was going to be getting in the back of my vehicle. And then he did. He said his mother set up the rideshare app for him. He got in the car. We were just talking as I was taking him home. It was a short commute. It was only like 7 minutes, but within that span, he told me how they lost the debate. He also shared with me that he said that it was all politics. I thought that was funny. 7 years old, already knowing what politics is about. But that's we're in a different time where the youth has access to a lot of social media application, and then of course you don't know the parents' background, so how informed he is, but he knows what it is. He has somewhat of an understanding, even if he didn't have a complete grasp. So I told him, I was like, hey, even though they may have been some politics in it, and there may have been some sleight of the hand, there may have been some cheating. It's good that you put your best foot forward and you try to work in the team, because I explained to him how everything goes hand in hand. Like nothing can be done individually. You can start things individually. You can carry out certain tasks, but to really change the horizons or change the events, you kind of need a team. You have to what they call delegate. So I know all of the grown folks out there know that. Most of the youth knows that. And heck, even the little seventh grader student that I was taking around on that summer day, he knew what that was. So that was a great story. He also shared that he didn't really like school like that, but I get it. I mean, we were young. It was a point we didn't really like school. In fact, he confessed that he really only liked going to school because of his friends. So I thought that was facetious, because who doesn't like friends? Even if the nature of friendships changes as people get older. People move, people fall out. But for the little kid, that was great. He was on a good path. And so as I dropped him off, it was all cool. You know, um, every passenger has a story at Uber and Lyft. And sometimes, unfortunately, the story isn't always positive. For heads, you must have tails. For the yin, you must have the yang. So I'm going to speak on a few negative encounters I had. One negative encounter I had was I had a man and a woman hop in the car. This was towards the end of the month, when it's like 7 days towards the end of the month. And the man had certain funds allocated for rent. And the wife, she went to a casino in Oklahoma and spent the rent money on gambling. And I know you all may be wondering, how do you know this? Because they were going at it in my back seat. They were. They were yelling and everything. And I didn't say stop, because was a teachable moment. Even though it's common sense to me, it was a teachable moment. And the way it was sounding like they were not going to be able to make rent. And if they were to make rent, it was going to have to come by means like of a credit card or taking out a loan. And we all know with inflation in today's times that it's going to cost a pretty penny. It's going to be a tax, So they were just going back and forth. And, he was asking her, he was like, hey, why would you do that? How could you do that? Why didn't you listen? And more as they traded words, it sounded as if she had a gambling problem. I was like, that's sad all around, because come to find out, they had 3 kids. It's just, I mean, addiction is a serious issue. I'm not trying to make excuses. If she sincerely did have an addiction, hopefully, they can work it out. But that can be a cause for a sit down at the table, and not to have supper, but to have a serious dialogue about economics, allocating, and be able to fight the temptation of his wife going to gamble. Um, and I try to understand where she was coming from, because see, I don't gamble. I only gamble when I know I'm gonna win. Even when I win, sometimes I lose. But I'm like what they call a toddler gambler. I don't even know. I just made that up, but a toddler gambler. Like I may bet like $5 here, $10 here, $20 max. Yeah, because as they say in Vegas, the table always wins. But I also know the skill money don't make money. But at the end of the day, I know that it's not for me. For Uber and Lyft, every passenger has a story. And if you have a story, even if you're a Uber and Lyft passenger, feel free to let me know below in the comments. What has your story been? Even if you're a person that drives for Uber or for Lyft, or drive for both applications, or you're just a customer that hops in the back of the vehicle. Because even if you're a customer, the driver can have a story, especially if you're a social individual that hops in the back and has to go to where you have to go, and the driver is open to dialogue. I'm sure he has a story because every man and woman has a story. Uh, and if you know someone that has a story, needs some help, some motivation, or anything in life, feel free to click the link and get the book, and it can help them. And if it can't help a family member, it can help a friend. And if it can't help a friend, it can definitely help an enemy. So much so that y'all may be able to create a good relationship where you all can become associates or go to the outer limits of being married. Only time will tell. But yeah, I just wanted to bring you all this today. You all continue to have a good one, and I'll talk to you all later. Peace.